The decision to leave home and make the exhausting journey to Canada wasn't an easy one. Rather, saying goodbye to their homes and families was a difficult choice for most immigrants. Oftentimes, one family member would leave first, and then the others would follow at a later date. This was almost always the case for married couples, where the husband would immigrate alone, establish himself, and then send for his family. This meant that wives and children made the daunting journey on their own, usually with little knowledge of the English language or the country that they were traveling to. And with that journey comes the dangers that one encounters when crossing the Atlantic and this vast continent. That is, if they could even get here. Nell claimed to have been on the Titanic, but her son has always denied this, and our research has not located a likely candidate among published passenger lists. Regardless, it demonstrates the widespread anxiety of traveling vast distances, and that Vera considered herself lucky to have made it to Canada safely. The Calls has bought an orchard in Alice Siding. According to the family, they considered traveling on the Titanic when they immigrated to Creston, but a wise relative urged them to book passage on a more seasoned vessel instead. Still, they ended up making all 3 voyages to and from England on ships of the White Star Line, the same company that owned the Titanic, and did all this traveling within months of the Titanic sinking. Pasqua Amoroso married her husband Carmelo in 1910, and they immigrated together from Italy to New York that same year. In 1912, she and their son Frank returned to Italy to visit relatives, and Carmelo stayed behind. They soon became trapped thanks to World War I and were unable to come back to North America until 1919. By that time, Carmelo was working in Edmonton, and after being reunited, the family eventually moved to Creston in 1947. So when we look at reasons to immigrate, fleeing Europe is a common theme that comes up. Thousands of people sought to escape the political and economic turmoil that the First and Second World Wars left behind. Canada, however, was not initially too keen on welcoming newcomers. In 1923, our immigration restrictions began to relax somewhat, and British, American, and Northern and Western Europeans were welcomed. Central and Eastern Europeans could come if they were farm laborers or sponsored family members, but Southern Europeans and people from anywhere else were not welcome. The Depression brought about renewed restrictions, which were in place until about 1946, at which point they began to relax once again, and we see an influx of immigration from then on. Magdalena and Ted Lappins were both born in Latvia. Ted suffered a bad leg wound in World War II, where he served in the 1941 Latvian resistance to German occupation. Magda only knew he was wounded and in a hospital somewhere in Europe, so when the war ended, she traveled throughout Europe, going from hospital to hospital, often on foot, until she found him and nursed him back to health. They immigrated to Canada soon after, making their way to Creston in 1967. Alice Buchholz fled the horrors of Nazi Germany. She had trained as a nurse and was working at the seniors' home when the Nazis came to power. They euthanized all of the elderly at the home because they were seen as a drain on the elite Aryan race. Alice was then forced to work in a hospital in northern Germany, caring for elderly and mentally challenged patients. But when they began to be euthanized as well, she fled to Canada and eventually made her way to Wendell. At the age of 16, Elsie Hurl and her family sought to escape the economic depression that was affecting all of Europe. This English family was drawn to Canada by government farmland giveaways, excited to start anew. They booked 4th-class passage on the Titanic, but thankfully, the ship filled before they were able to board. They took the next vessel instead, and all made it here in one piece. But it wasn't just individuals and families who journeyed to Canada. Join us tomorrow as we delve into mass immigration.